Welcome to The World Today. I'm Vikas Majid Khan. Today we're talking about the impact of CPEC on regional growth and specifically on Pakistan's economy and also connectivity within the region. Let me introduce my guests in the studio joining me for the conversation today. First of all, we have Tipu Sultan Sahab, Brigadier. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. Joined by Yasir Masood and Salman Betani. Thank you very much for being here. I want to start with Yasir, actually, sir, because Yasir Saab recently wrote a very interesting article because from time to time we have criticisms emerging regarding CPEC, and many people are not really aware or not clear about what CPEC is all about. So recently we had somebody in the press report about a $40 billion debt that Pakistan might be incurring. So if you could clarify exactly what that was all about, Yasir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think it's since the idea was conceived in 2013, recurrently we have seen these kinds of far-fetched analysis being drawn by the critics. Now, when we talk about the critics, we know that there is an international criticism against CPEC. By international, what I mean is particularly from India and USA, because they have their own rationale, they have their own reasons for opposing the Belt and Road Initiative and CPEC as well. But it becomes doubly difficult for us to, when our own very critics are talking about CPEC, and then based on completely, some bizarre kind of analysis are emanating from our side. I think there is for what is needed, because time and again from the government side as well, things have been clarified. But what I see is that this is not a long-term solution, because every now and then we rebuttal such kind of articles or such kind of analysis. What we need to do is that we need to educate. I think education is much more important. We need to give that proper awareness that what is the whole umbrella of CPEC. For example, the gentleman is claiming that it's about 40 billion debt which Pakistan has to pay in the next 20 years. So my question is that how he came up with the next 20 years, because instead up till now there is only $18 billion which has been spent on some 22 projects. Out of that 11 projects are completed and the rest of 11 are almost at the edge of completion. The loan part out of that is it only accounts for about $6 billion. The rest is investment, the rest is grants, and the rest is some part of that is there are different modalities of that. That gentleman is putting all the investment into one basket and claiming with its own kind of analysis that Pakistan has to pay this much. And another thing is that Pakistan's debt, altogether debt is about $100 billion. Out of that, $6 billion, if we call it a debt trap, if we comes up with an analysis that this is going to burden Pakistan's economy, I would see that it is just an absurd analysis. So, and even Chinese embassy have very openly for the first time, it came up with detailed information as well as from the government side. But what I would recommend, and I see because I'm part and parcel of CPEC and I have been looking at these affairs for quite some time now, I think we have to have a certain media policy, media and communication policy, which is long-standing, which is based on facts and figures, which should be properly disseminated. But I see that these challenges are massive and huge. Only Pakistan government or Chinese embassy, they won't be able to defend this. I think the academia, the rest of the stakeholders, they need to step up and bring these positive and based on true facts and figures which are affiliated with CPEC. Only then we would be able to defeat and defend such kind of analysis which are emanating now and then. Because if you see, our real success would be that if these kind of analysis come to the surface, there should not be any kind of negative impression of that. But what happens with that is because of lack of education, because of lack of understanding, people, it creates a kind of doubts and fears in the people's mind.
Brigadier Saab, we also were made to believe that some Chinese companies might be relocating to Pakistan or starting their operations in Pakistan as well. Now we are at that stage where almost 5 years have gone by when this project started. How many Chinese companies have relocated to Pakistan or are in the process or will be in the coming weeks and months?
I think CPEC is the most discussed project in the world, should I say, not only in South Asia. And some people say that as CPEC is going to be another East India company. Neither the Mughals are ruling here, nor the Chinese are British, nor do we have any example of Chinese behaving in that manner. I think the interdependability regionally, geographically and economically between China and Pakistan and rest of the world is a foregone conclusion. And the forces opposite to that, as explained by my colleague very well, those who oppose that, the Americans do not want the Chinese influence to increase beyond the borders of the subcontinent as a gateway to Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, Suez Canal up to Mediterranean and then to Europe, or across Malacca towards Far East. And the Indians do not want Pakistan to prosper. So they have a common goal, should I say. And all the articles that have been perpetuated and written in that respect, work towards that strategy of realizing that if CPEC is realized, the Belt and Road Initiative is up and running, Pakistan will be off the clutches, economic clutches of the West. Sometimes they put us through IMF and World Bank, another time the FFTF, and other organizations, and religious insinuations of, poor record of minorities in Pakistan is taken up. So all is towards coercing Pakistan. But of late what we have seen is that I think the government in Islamabad has got one thing glaring in it. There may be many weaknesses, but its foreign relations and policy are sort of indigenous, and when you stand up on your own feet, there are avenues that open as against to what you have been listening to the others and not having a foreign minister for 5 years, not speaking at all, and the last Mughal being in Kot Lakhpat jail, as they say. So Pakistan is well placed and well poised towards achieving its goals, I would say. The only thing is that what I see is that the governance needs certain improvements, and the team that Imran Khan has collected has to be synthesized and crystallized in view of their ability in economics and other aspects, should I say, need improvement. So far as the Chinese companies, I have been recently in China, and they are very well aware of what the West is writing and what the Indians are writing about CPEC. And the Indians are also wooing the Chinese in various fields, and they do understand that. They are playing positively to the Indians. They have a trade, a huge volume of trade with the Indians. But what I learned from China is that their strategic direction remains the same, and they are very focused on their strategic interests in the world. I think the current government, when it came into being, the question that you asked, that how many Chinese companies are going to be independently operating in Pakistan, that was one aspect that my colleague Yasir may clarify, because I do not have the requisite data stored in my mind on that subject. But I think the government wanted to clarify or negotiate on certain aspects of the operational facets of CPEC. Should it be totally given to Chinese companies in certain quarters? Should it be a mix of the Pakistan's ability, whatever we have towards it? I think if you overall see this CPEC, I think the media is speculating at best, and I would agree that the media has to make a case for Pakistan CPEC and not adhere to what the others who want to stall the CPEC are doing. I would put across a question that if CPEC was to be packed out of Pakistan, would it be good or would it be bad for us? Yes. Yeah, you have to ask yourself a question.
Indeed, sir, but the media also has to commit to its responsibility of being a watchdog for society, and therefore it is its right and duty to ask questions where it feels that they are not being answered adequately. So let me ask this question to Bhatani Saab. Bhatani Saab, some people think that China is, or this is one of the criticisms that has come out, that China is dictating terms to Pakistan and the federal government is not consulting the provinces. Is that correct, or is that perception correct?
I think we are hearing this term time and again, fifth generation warfare. So this is a buzzword these days, and what I feel is that actually the fifth generation warfare is targeting CPAC because there is a series of false news, there is a series of miscommunication, misrepresentation of data that we see for the last 3 or 4 years. And there is a series of clarifications from the previous government as well, and this government is also into that. So I agree with Yasser and that there should be a strategy. May it not be a think tank or policy, whatever, but there should be a strategy. One that Pakistan as a state should not get into a defensive mode, because Pakistan is a sovereign country. Pakistan has a long-standing strategic friendship with China. It's based on decades-long cooperation in terms of defense, in terms of economics, and this is the extension of that, this long-term friendship. 2, the perception management that these stakeholders are trying to do, I think it's very weak, because China has been reiterating the fact that time and again, and Pakistan has also agreed upon the fact that this project is imperatively based upon economic ideals. It is changing the face of Pakistan from a strategic centric state to an economic centric state, which should be honored, which should be acknowledged by not only the countries in the region, but outside the region. But countries in the region are adamant at the fact that they are trying their tooth and nail to somehow prove that this project is only strategic in dimension. However, there might be some strategic connotations, and Pakistan-China relationship has always strategic connotations. But largely, this agenda is economic, it is financial. China has its own gains, Pakistan has its own gains. Pakistan, I think, as a state, is cognizant of the fact that what good it will bring to it and what not. Now, China is investing a lot of money, and China is very particular about its goals and ambitions, as we have seen in the last 30 years, particularly in the post-70s China. So definitely they are up to their mark, they will pursue their interests. While at the same time, Pakistan is not only the strategic partner of China, but a close neighbor of China. The country in South Asia with which China has enjoyed cordial relations, trustworthy relations. We were the one who kind of gave them this corridor to West, which they wanted. And that corridor transformed China for what it is now. So China would not think of, it is not in the interest of China to think about any imperialist mindset or imperialist design. And then, as Brigadier Saab said, Pakistan nor Chinese are Britishers, and it is not subcontinent. Now it is Pakistan. Pakistani people, Pakistani state, Pakistani institutions, they have their own strength. We have fought a very difficult war, the war that nobody in the world could have fought. We specifically, we are the only nation in this world who came up with a military strategy for this kind of war. This is a novel warfare. Neither America had fought this kind of war, nor any other country which we have fought. So we have come a long way. This is a very naive analysis by anybody that somebody passed judgments like colonization or like East India Company, or like this party is pursuing this much interest, that party is pursuing that much interest. I think so. As far as CPAC is concerned, the only problem that I felt was initially that government was not much open about the information. But what I know, and my panel will also agree with me, that all the stakeholders, particularly provincial stakeholders, were on board. They were taking to Beijing, they were on board, they were invited here to meetings, and if you remember, in the last government, since Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf was in opposition and their government was in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they had some reservations. And due to this very staunch kind of difference of opinion with the government that was PMLN based, still there was a consensus between the provincial government and the federal government. Had there been any issue, the PTI government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa would have not agreed with PMLN government. But otherwise, PTI government, while it was in opposition, it was not agreeing on a single point, single agenda with Muslim League Noon. Maybe that is the case now as well. Pakistan Muslim League Noon is a major stakeholder in opposition and PTI is in government. But you would have not seen, and they are at loggerheads on political grounds. On
A lot of the
NAB and all.
decisions regarding CPEC
But
were
still
taken in the
CPEC
previous
is-
government, and this government is just now finding its feet and beginning its term.
Can I add something, Waqas?
Please go ahead.
What Salman said. Yes, it's when we talk about this buzzword like fifth generation warfare, or we also call it hybrid warfare, what is the reason? We need to understand that as well. What CPEC is going to do for Pakistan is, for many years Pakistan remained under the fold of geostrategic realm. And that was the reason that Pakistan compromised its geo-economic realities and we couldn't grow. And you see, in the meantime, if you see, for like East Asian, Southeast Asian states, all of them, got accentuated because they were not under the fold of geostrategic compulsions. That's where, CPEC has given Pakistan a leverage for the first time, that Pakistan is able to divert its policies from geostrategic ambit towards geo-economic realities. And why there is a lot of opposition? Because this is the only way that Pakistan would economically get strengthened in the region. Otherwise, you see, even if we talk about Gwadar, Gwadar is going to strengthen Pakistan geostrategically, obviously, but it is going to open lots of avenues and doors for the international investment. Once Pakistan is on that path, on that route, that is the time that Pakistan is going to grow, which is, that's why India is probably intimidated with Pakistan's better financial and economic standing in the region. And why India is opposing, if you see why I'm using this hybrid warfare, all of these terms like East India Company or debt trap diplomacy and so on and so forth, all of these terms are actually coined by India. And how it is infusing this kind of negativity or this kind of negative perception through social media. And also at the global canvas, if you see what US is doing to China is imposing trade war, initiating tariff war, putting economic sanctions. So these are all the part and parcel of the hybrid warfare. Right. We need to understand this. We need to counter this, because this is again a kind of a warfare which we are being confronted with. The only way is, and especially what CPEC has given up till now, if we see these 5 years on, CPEC has given us this leverage and this positioning that now Saudi Arabia is looking forward to invest in Pakistan. United Arab Emirates is eyeing to invest in Pakistan. Lots of European countries are eyeing for their own due share in CPEC, the whole Central Asia and even Russia. So this is the kind of benefit which CPEC has given up till now. And then there are lots of questions about the early harvest projects, or the early harvest of the 5 years. See, if we turn the clock back, Pakistan had acute energy shortfalls. And there was no country under the sun which was going to invest in Pakistan. We have tried our best. No Western country, be it US or otherwise, they did not inject this much FDI which China did. And especially at that critical juncture when we were
starving for power.
Exactly. And then we had problems of, we were confronting against the war on terror.
Well, I'm glad that you raised the energy aspect of CPEC, and this is important because right now the entire world is facing the problem of climate change, and environmental issues are becoming very, very important, and people are paying attention to that. Even now as we speak, we have daily stories in our press regarding the air quality in various cities. Lahore is one of the most polluted cities on the planet. Delhi and Lahore are neck to neck in a competition on who's more polluted on any given day. So here's the question: that was an environmental assessment conducted prior to the development of each project under the CPEC banner, especially the coal-powered power plants that are being established? They are going to have a detrimental impact, and also the fact that we are importing the coal to run those power plants, that doesn't really make a lot of economic sense, sir. If you could please clarify why we are indulging in coal power when the whole world is moving towards renewable energy and clean energy, sir, and that is where China is also moving towards. So why do we have to suffer coal power plants?
Pakistan has had such acute energy problems that it is looking into all vistas to, cater for that shortfall. We know for a fact that we are trying the solar and wind power, hydel power and nuclear power and the coal power also. So far as the country is concerned, I think...
Because the entire world is moving away from coal, sir. Whether it's Germany in Europe, in fact in Germany they just presented the last piece of coal that was mined and put it in a museum. So we're quite far away from that.
The Germans are not as short of energy as we are. It can't be compared to that. We got to get the shortfall out. We got to give a chance to our industry, and I think as a stopgap arrangement, this is something which we have to bear.
It's a bitter pill that we need to swallow.
Yeah. I will tell you that there is an aura, there is a feeling about the confidence that Pakistan is gaining out of confusion that we had over the yesteryears, and no amount of appreciation for Pakistan's institutions to fight the war on terror, and the balance of power that Pakistan is asserting with certain other quarters like China and Russia. I think if we can set our governance and law and order right, we are poised towards progress and with confidence. I think he has pointed out a very, very specific thing, that the implication of our strategic relationship with the West was such that we did not have too much of choices, and we were really acting in the framework of what the West was telling us. So Pakistan, as they say, has sold itself very cheap in certain quarters in its economics and foreign policy and positioning in the world. That is not the position now. The position is that Pakistan is asserting itself. Our policy on Kashmir has been inconsistent. We have not been taking the name of Kashmir. We have not been taken India to task by catching their horns as they say, that we were to catch the bull by the horn. And I think Pakistan would now progress well, should we put our law and order situation in order.
All right, so moving forward, another accusation that has come out is the lack of transparency in many CPEC projects. How is that issue being addressed, Yasir?
I don't think so, because time and again this is being said that there is lack of transparency. I think things are crystal clear on part of the government, because as I just mentioned that this time government actually felt this dire need to open up things in front of the people. We should also remember one thing, that any projects, in any other part of the world, some projects cannot be made public in the best interest of the country as well. And why I'm saying this? Because you see, when we see that we had an acute issue of the energy shortfall, and there was no investment which was coming into Pakistan. So there are certain projects where we have given guarantees to the Chinese companies on a bit higher rate, but we were not left with any other option, because you see, these are the prerequisite. If we don't have the energy, if you see, in 2013 and after that, our industry was almost running out from the country to other countries. So we had to bring them back, and the prerequisite was, one, infrastructure, and the second was energy. So by 2021, we will, our energy shortfall would be over. Infrastructure is going great guns because of these 5 years. Now we are moving into the next phase. The next phase is that it has to be more people-friendly corridor. we want to make it a knowledge corridor, we want to make it a cultural corridor. These are certain affiliations of the economic activity which China has tried and experimented in China as well. We also need to understand that sometimes we need to give this economic boost a bit of time. It takes some years. Yes, obviously, this is our natural tendency that we jump onto different conclusions very quickly, but we have to give certain time. Even the concerns of Balochistan, if you see, there was a lot of issues flared up in the news of late that Balochistan is not being treated properly, or Balochistan is not getting proper due share. I tell you what, there are 12 projects only dedicated to Gwadar, and Gwadar alone is not only sufficient for Balochistan, but Gwadar is gigantic and huge for the whole country and for the whole region. And that's why there is a lot of opposition from Indian side as well. There are more than 400 plus small ports of India. Gwadar alone has the much more capacity to handle every year. So that's why we need to give it a bit of time, because now we are in the next phase. We are focusing on the socio-economic development. We are focusing on the agriculture, or the major chunk of our economy depends on agriculture. So I think we need to give it a bit of time. Next 5 years on, things would be very different what we see now.
Well, here's a philosophical question for Bhitani Saab. Bhitani Saab, what we see is that there's a vast difference between the work ethic of Pakistanis and Chinese as a nation. So do you think they must be running into some kind of issues concerning cooperation between the two nations, and cultural exchanges that Yasser was talking about are not taking place at the pace that we would like? So what would you like to say about how we can change our own approach towards work, because we've had cases of problems cropping up from time to time. How do we bridge that gap? How do we come onto the same page, as they say, when it comes to the work ethic?
Well, I think the weak point of Pakistan-China relationship during all these years has been this cultural amalgamation and exchange. We have never exchanged or we have never amalgamated with the Chinese. I think that should have happened decades before, because there was this acceptance, there was this trust, and all the factors needed for cooperation between two nations, two states and two societies were there. But due to various different reasons, and we are not going into that because that's not our topic. Now, when people from different communities, they intermingle, when they work together, definitely it's human society, it's sociology that there would be conflict, there would be cooperation. There are minor quarrels and fights going on, but there are marriages also going on. And who would have thought that Pakistanis would marry Chinese, or Chinese would marry Pakistanis? So at the same time, this is a normal sociological process where there are these minor conflicts, which I think at times are blown out of proportion, but they do not impact over bilateral relations between two states. Definitely the differences, the linguistic barriers, the cultural orientations, the bent of mind. Chinese over the period of time as a society has become hyper entrepreneurial, and Pakistanis generally are not entrepreneurial even. Generally,
what I meant to say was that the attitude that we exhibit is more laid back, and, and we are great procrastinators, when the Chinese are the complete opposite of that. So how does that dynamic work?
That's what I said, that we are, I politely said that we are not much entrepreneurial.
Right.
So it would take some time, but definitely when the economic dividends and when the industrialization will take place, Chinese also were way more laid back than us pre-70s.
Right.
So, but over the period of time when they opened up and industrialization came, when they became more competitive, even look at Japanese people. Japanese are the most workaholic people in the world, and now they are facing trouble due to that behavior. So Pakistanis will take pace because obviously competition, financial.
There's also the vast difference in the capacity of Pakistani workers and Chinese workers. For example, the educational qualifications, technical training, so on and so forth. So many of the CPEC projects require skills which are not available among the Pakistani population. So how are we addressing this particular issue? Would you like to answer this, Tipu
The
Saab?
Chinese, there were opium wars of China between the old British Empire and subcontinent there. But I think the profound difference came with the revolution of Mao. And after having studied 8 or 10 years, 8 or 10 days in China on the invitation of Chinese Communist Party, very recently I realized that the Chinese culture, there have been two revolutions in China. One is the communist revolution, the other is cultural revolution. And going even to the remote villages and all that, I think the Chinese people are poised like a machine. They're very clear in what their responsibility is, and they have to just discharge that responsibility even if somebody is not monitoring them. But there is a system of reporting back the progress on Chinese government functionaries every day. Every day should, it's not a joke, every day, and then on weekly basis it is compiled and sent up. I think the difference between the Chinese people and Pakistan society is basically of the work ethics and discipline. Besides skills and physical fitness, should I say, and other aspects, I think the work ethics of our nation has to be improved. I have to say that we have to, there are so many government organizations.
And sir, I think for that we need to invest on education, and I think we should also talk to the Chinese about investing in primary education in Pakistan. That is a big issue, very close to my heart, that I keep talking
Absolutely,
about.
absolutely.
Yasser, you want to add something
Yes,
to this,
yes.
or may I ask you a question?
Yes, actually, I just want to add a couple of things. We actually lack in three major factors. One is the capacity building, capacity issues. Then we have the skill, but we don't have the proper and appropriate trainings to them. And the third one is incentive. But because of CPEC, now vocational training centers are going to work very soon in Gwadar and the rest of the country as well. So China is providing, capacity issues. They're going to address that. The second is China is going to train lots of skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled, blue collar and white collar, people, and they're taking lots of already been taken a lot of workers from Pakistan to China, and they're going to do the same thing. The third one is, yes, I agree with Tipu Saab that we lack, these work ethics. You see, if we see from 1978 up till now, China has been able to maintain 9 to 10% of GDP growth rate.
Yeah.
Even alone in 2018, China has taken more than 10 million people out of poverty. More than 13 billion people, they have been given jobs in China. More than 5.8 million people have got new homes in China. And the President Xi's speech, the welcoming speech of 2019, they're further going to open up, and the target is to take more than 10 billion people out of the poverty. By 2020, China would be able to eradicate poverty completely. So these are the glaring examples in front of Pakistan and for any other nation as well.
Absolutely.
So we need to step up. And yes, I agree with Salman as well that things would definitely change because we are at the mouth of or at the edge of initiating the industrialization.
Absolutely.
We badly need
Here is the
industrialization and
question.
special economic zones.
That is the
Now
point.
that we are in the early harvest phase of CPEC, around $46 billion, do you have any details regarding the share of the federating units, the allocation of the budgets? Taxpayers will eventually be expected to pay these loans off. So is there a plan to make it sustainable?
Yes, there is a plan to make it sustainable. The problem is that we are a bit keen on the finances, on the the overall basket of the finances. But the problem is we are not talking about the upshots, the benefits which this economic by which these projects will generate more economic activity. We need to keep that in mind that one economic venture actually gives birth to other multiplied economic activity as well. So we are not talking about that. We are only talking about we are more keen about on the finances. I think up till now all the new projects apart from 22 projects including energy and infrastructure and the rest, the new projects will be signed and with new terms and conditions. So Pakistan is wary of the fact that if let's put it this way, that if there were some loopholes in the previous projects, this government is very keen to address that. And Pakistan has categorically, explained and put forth in the 8th JCC, which occurred on the 20th of December in Beijing. So there are new contours, including these concerns as well, that Pakistan need this cushion from the Chinese side, that we are a bit concerned in certain projects, and China is more than happy to do that. They're all been
let
welcoming.
me ask Bhatani Saab that since we're talking about the early harvest projects, many Pakistanis were looking to see Chinese companies starting their operations in the special economic zones that were established. But how soon do you think that is going to materialize and people will actually start getting jobs?
I think it would take some time, because definitely the pre-early harvest time period and the early harvest time period is basically the first step. And the first step is, it is laying down the foundation. We are still working on the roads network, which is the main thing. We have to still work on the railway network. We have to still work on the optic fiber thing. So what I'm trying to say is that as a nation or as a society, at times we are in a haste. And this kind of economic projects, are for the next century. And the dividends that we want to see, that people will start getting jobs.
Instant gratification.
Yeah,
is not part of this project.
it will take some time.
Right.
It's not even 5 years now.
Right.
2013.
2013. It's just very less time for a huge project like this.
Indeed.
Just don't compare it, but just for example, just think about Industrial Revolution in Europe.
Right.
Particularly in Britain, France, and Germany. Look how much time it took. It was not like that.
It wasn't overnight.
It was not overnight.
Absolutely.
After 10 years that the whole society got into the industry and everybody was in the
Absolutely.
industry.
Absolutely.
So it took around 120 years.
That's right.
And I think what we are expecting is, the thing which you are expecting is in 2 decades, 2.5 decades, I think it will start churning like that.
Inshallah. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you
taking
very
out the
much.
time.
Always an advantage to have an expert.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and as always, we like to say, please draw your own conclusions from what you heard. That's all the time we have. Goodbye.